Hey folks, and welcome to my 5-mast vision guide for Stormwind. In my opinion, the harder of the two visions. This is for Resto Druid if you're doing it solo, so it's going to be recommending that you go cat weaving. Before we begin, I'm just going to go through the 5 masts in the order that I think of difficulty, so maybe if you're working your way up to 5, maybe you're an alt, and you just want to know where to get started. So in my opinion, the easiest mast to get started with is Mast of Dark Imagination, which is when you're below 50% sanity, an enemy will spawn. The second will be Faceless Mast of the Burning Bridge. This causes void zones to spawn when you move. It's not a big deal. The third will really depend on what your issue is. If you're struggling with running out of time, just your sanity, then I would recommend going with Mast of the Pained, which has each area consists of 2 madness. However, if you are more likely to die just due to sheer damage, then I would recommend going for Master of the Daredevil to increase sanity damage you take. The fourth one will then be dependent on which one you picked before. So if your issue is the damage, I would again pick maximum sanity reduction before going for the madness one twice at the end. And if your issue is more just running out of sanity, then go for the sanity damage caused by creatures, the Daredevil, and then finish off with the Long Night. Right, and with that out of the way, let's get started. Right, I'm going to be watching this with you at 2.5 times speed, and I'll just talk you through everything that's happening. So right at the very start, you've got 2 packs, just Moonfire, Sunfire down, and just then pop into cat form if you want to, and just swipe. You'll notice I go for this pack over here. This is to check the strength, which potion is going to be the potion that you don't want. So in this case, it's the red one. Every other potion other than the red one is useful to you, so just take all of them. I know some people only list the one that restores sanity to you, but honestly, all 3 of the others are good, especially the one that spawns fire in front of you. You'll notice here I check the house on the right there. It's not got the NPC inside it, which means the other one is going to be active. Each of the first areas has 1 or 2 bosses spawn, which will give you a buff. So in this case, we're going to be going into the house up here, and we'll be clearing out everything up here. This one, I believe, is given haste from this one. It's relatively easy just to sort of swipe everything down. Now, on the pack here, we have Heart Piercers. Heart Piercers, their main mechanic is the piercing shot. You just want to move out of the way whenever they do piercing shot. The other ones, the Void Speakers, they'll do eventually a Psychic Scream Fear around them, so you normally want to try and take these ones out first. On the whole, if you're going in here solo as a healer, you'll find that the mobs deal a lot more damage than they would if you were a DPS, but they also actually tend to die a lot quicker, especially if you've gone for sort of a DPS build like the cat weaving traits, and you see that I also have some Azurite and Corruption. So this area is pretty smooth and clean. There's no real issues. There's a few Heart Piercers, but generally there's no issue in this area. You just see I'm sort of going around looking at chests. I would highly recommend, if it's just your first time, not bothering with odd crystals and just focus on clearing it, get your achievement out of the way. This mini boss here we're fighting is pretty simple. You can decurse his void drenched blades. I don't actually do it here, which I'm not quite sure why, but it's just a movement speed reduction. You can easily remove it since you can decurse. The only difficult pack per se, or pack that you need to pay attention to at least, is down in front of the tram, which has just got a double Heart Piercer pack. So just when they do their piercing shots, just make sure you move out of the way. This boss here is another pretty easy boss. He will stick you through stealth, so you'll need to get the stealth out quickly on him. Just move out of the circles, and he dies extremely quickly. Now these I-beams here, the tendrils, they can hit really hard. You can dispel their dot that they put on you, and we're now going to enter the Old Town. Now Old Town immediately always starts with 2 stealth mobs, and this is probably the hardest part of the entire place. There's a lot of very dangerous mobs here, and because it's a super corrupted area, you're going to find that everything, the affixes are a lot worse. So the Shadow Blades do a huge amount of damage if you're near to them with Spiteful Assault, so they're generally good ones to try and take down. But what you really need to try and take down first are the Informants, because these ones will eventually transform and will then start doing Touch of the Abyss. Now, Touch of the Abyss, if it goes through, because you can't interrupt it because you're a healer, will actually stun you, and if you're stunned in this area, it's pretty much going to be a death. This mini boss, again, just move out of her circle and just move out of the cone, which she does. It can be a bit annoying if you have some of the affixes that sort of force you to stand still. It's probably better just to take her sanity damage if that's the case. So some of these packs are extremely dangerous when they have 2 Spiteful Assaults and Informants. You can see my health, like that's just 3 mobs, and how quickly I went down there. Because you've also just got high damage stuff from like Light Hunters, the stealth mobs. They can hit they don't tend to do many bad abilities, they just hit very hard. And you can see this week I've got a very bad combination of abilities. Leaden Foot, despite the fact that some people really hate it, is by far the easiest affix to deal with here, especially as a druid you can shapeshift out of it. So notice in most of these ones I'm immediately going for the Informants, but that does mean that I take a huge amount of damage from some of the others. This boss is another relatively easy one, and probably the easiest pull in the entire place, at least of Old Town, as you just need to sort of move out of the circle that he does, but he goes down pretty quickly anyway. Now, Spymaster Shaw he's up next, and honestly he's really not that bad. You do have a couple of advantages as a Resto Druid. One, Moonfire and Sunfire don't actually care whether you're looking at the target, which is great. You'll notice I spend a fair amount of my time just not looking at him and playing it safe. And also you can just swipe him from behind as well. So generally speaking, if I'm worried about the eyes on me, then I'll just sort of have my back permanently to Shaw, Moonfire, Sunfire, and just care about putting out Rage and Rip. Now, here I am just looking for some of the corrupted crystals. Again, I highly recommend not doing this if this is one of your first areas, because honestly, like this entire place, you see the Touch of the Abyss. Typhoon is what I'm normally taking, as it's one of the only ways you can remove the Touch of the Abyss. And speaking of stuff to do, not on a first go, is certainly this place here. I highly recommend, even if there's a chest inside here, if this is your first time, do not do this place. It is exceptionally painful. You see here I get stunned and just how bad it is. Luckily I'd already taken down some of the high damage mobs beforehand. As for tricks that I'm going with as well, I'm always a big fan of Flame. I think Flame is very good for taking down the priority targets here. And that's the main one that I would certainly recommend going for in terms of essences. Just checking off some of the old crystals. I don't know them off by heart in Stormwind, so I think I've probably missed some during this run. Now we're back into the Trade District. Trade District is another sort of more simple ones. The tentacles can be a bit annoying, but they're overall not too bad. The Tormentors, despite the fact that they have their casts, will actually not be interrupted by Typhoon. And it can deal a fair amount of damage. Let's say every mob in here tends to deal more damage because you're a healer. This Inquisitor Darkspeak will cause quite a high amount of sanity damage to you because you can't interrupt his cast at all. If you happen to proc Gift of the Titans from the pack before, I would immediately pull him while you have Gift of the Titans to prevent all sanity loss. But other than that, just make sure you're a healthy amount of sanity. If you haven't had to use an orb by this point, you can use one beforehand if you're getting a bit worried. Here I just know how much damage I can actually deal to him anyway, and I know that I'm going to kill him in time. So this other boss here is another pretty simple one. In fact, with the sheer amount of dots that you can put on him as a Resto Druid, you can actually just sort of immediately trigger him into doing a second Chains of Server that you straight away. Now, I didn't talk about it in the Dwarven District about one of the second 2 buff bosses because he wasn't up. But since he wasn't up there, I am going to have the Guild Vault boss up. Or by boss I mean sort of mini boss, buffing boss. So you'll notice that just after I free a few of these prisoners here, we're going into there. It's a pretty simple one, who just deals some damage to you and just gets you a little, I believe it's a crit buff for this one here. So we're just going to finish doing the last of the packs here. I say no mobs here are amazingly dangerous, they're more just annoying and the tormentors, you say, are at its worst, just haze damage. Here we just have the mini boss that I just quickly dodge because I don't want to accidentally aggro him. And now we're entering the last one. I do think Old Town is probably harder than Mage District, but Mage District you do want to certainly play it safe. I do tend to do it last because I know that I often tend to play it extremely safe, so it's nice to have everything sort of in reserve ready to go. So the first thing you'll normally want to do is just take it slow at the start and let all the flesh beasts come for you, because they'll patrol, like they have huge patrol areas, so you can normally wipe out all of them without going too far in. You'll notice I aggro a few here, and these are probably the last ones I aggro. So here, just sort of clearing out one of these packs here, and after this I am going to use an orb. I use an orb here now because this last boss, so I'm going to use an orb. I use it here because this is the last boss that's going to cause, can cause some big annoying sanity damage. If you're forced to stand still, you're sort of forced to stand in his pools, and because you've got 3 of these orbs, it's just best to play it safe. Now the Greater Void Elementals are the most dangerous mobs here because they put a debuff on you that increases the shadow damage that you take by 100%, and since almost everything here causes very high shadow damage and you are a healer, so you're taking more damage, it's a good idea, and you can't interrupt it, to just dispel it immediately. So you'll notice here the Void Speakers, this is probably the worst pull, as you've got 2 people who love casting Mind Flay and a Void Elemental that loves putting increased shadow damage on you. So the moment the Void Buffet comes out, I'm immediately dispelling it, because if you don't dispel it, you don't end up getting killed. So we go into this house here. This one's got 2 of the mobs from the same one here, but since it's only one of the Mind Flayers, it's much easier. Now we go to this second mini boss in this area, and unlike the first one, he's got really no risk whatsoever. He'll probably force you into such a way that you might not be able to hit him in melee range, but you can just sort of play it safe and fine. Here, these are stuff that you don't normally need to kill. I think I'm just sort of killing them because I haven't found all the chests or the old crystals. But again, you don't need to pull all these things, and you should just sort of prioritise on clearing. I would think about getting the chests though, because the chests are worth quite a bit, whereas the crystals are really not overly that important. So if you've had to use an orb earlier, maybe you had to use one in Old Town, which is perfectly fine, then you may not have one for Unbrick, and honestly, I don't think I use one here for Unbrick, it's strictly not necessary. So Entropic Missiles, you can't really avoid taking the sanity damage from, but if you push him quickly, you'll be fine. And this is where I actually do a huge amount of damage to him, and he's actually just taking so much dot damage. You can just play this one extremely safe. Painted Polymorph you're actually immune to if you're in a shapeshift form, so whenever that's coming in, just make sure you're in cat form, or another form, but I'd recommend cat form. Now, I know I've missed some more crystals, so I just sort of ran around here for a bit, looking for any old crystals I missed. Spoiler alert, I'm not quite sure I actually ended up finding any, and I just give up because I didn't want to look up where they were. So this just sort of shows off how much time, oh there we go, I did find one. How much time you've actually got left. I'd say for earlier ones you might end up wanting to use a orb during Old Town, for sure, especially if you die during Old Town. One during Mage Tower District is probably a good idea, and then obviously you can do one just before Valera. Use this pull here if you do happen to pull it. The repel deals quite heavy damage if you're attacking them and they're nearby to them, so just make sure you're away from them. If you do find it yourself, you're fighting some of the repel guys. So now we're going into Valera, so we've got a bit of role play, just enough time to put up an orb. So she has one eye from shore, but that's obviously just fine, you can just treat it the same way, it's much easier than shores. Darkness Strike will always be targeting you, and it's always going to be around you. Just like some of the other bosses, you spend most of your time just sort of doing the mechanics. Your dots will take care of the rest. So hiding behind when you need to, running away when you need to, facing away from her, being in, you'll notice here I didn't actually shapeshift, which was a big mistake here. But yeah, Tainted Polymorph, not a big deal at all, but you should just don't do it. Right, so that is my guide for Stormwind. 5 masks. Thank you very much for watching, and good luck with your loot.